My grandpa and grandma are super racist, and they make one of the biggest mistakes of their life when it comes to their inheritance. And guys, when I say they slipped up, you have no idea.
Hey everyone, I'm 19 male and I have a long story for you. Something crazy's happened to me lately and I wanted to get it off of my chest. There's a ton of background information to share, so this is going to be a long post. I must admit I'm feeling ecstatic right now, but I can't help but feel like this won't be the end of this whole ordeal. I have a feeling my family's not going to take what just happened so well. To cut right to the chase, I've had a bit of a rough life. I'm not trying to garner sympathy or sound like a whiny person, but it's simply the truth of the matter. My family situation, to put it mildly, is a tad complex. In fact, that would be more than generous description of the situation. The reality is a good portion of my life has been an absolute living heck, and it's entirely because I've been at the mercy of my wealthy, racist grandparents for so long. Even if my family had not been racist, my life still would have had a rough start. I was the brand new child of a second marriage. I was born into a situation with step-siblings from a previous marriage, and I know step-siblings often get jealous of the new kid in the house. But my stepbrother Nathan and my stepsister Scarlet escalated their behavior from routine sibling hijinks to full-on abuse and bullying quite quickly. But you add in the fact that I'm the black child of my dad's new black wife, and things are even worse. The complexities of the family dynamic were lost on me at the time, and I was too young to know what racism even was when I was a little kid. All I knew was that it was apparent that Mom and I were treated as outsiders or as others, no matter how much my father defended us and tried to make us feel like we were family, no matter how much he tried to include us equally in the family functions. He wanted me to feel like I was part of the family, and maybe he went overboard at times, and I can see how it might have made Nathan and Scarlet jealous, sure, but they did things to nobody should ever do to their sibling. And from an early age, I was well acquainted with a host of racial slurs. I would never repeat in person and won't ever repeat here. You can guess the type of things that they were saying to me. After all, this was a rural Christian family in the American South. Even though I tried to love my family and tried to get them to approve of me and include me as an equal, none of my efforts even worked. While I can have some level of empathy towards my stepbrother and stepsister for the way that they were so hostile towards me when I was a new member of the family, there's simply no excuse for why my grandma and grandpa treated me the way that they did. Well, where do you all think that Nathan and Scarlet learned all those racist words from? My grandparents were probably the two biggest racists in a town that was already full of ignorant, racist people. So even when I and my step-siblings would go visit the grandparents, Nathan and Scarlet would be getting spoiled and having a great time while I always got the cheap toys. The cheapest treats or no treats at all. And they always made me order less food than my step-siblings. I remember Grandma telling me that, quote, black boys get diabetes more often so they have to eat right. They would call me fat, ugly, stupid, all sorts of names, but they would berate me for no reason, and it only encouraged Nathan and Scarlet to abuse me more. I would keep my mouth shut about all this abuse because I did not want my parents, well, especially my father who was working so hard to support us. The family was not only abusive to me, Mom was treated me quite poorly. Nathan and Scarlet never accepted her as one of the family, even though Dad insisted time and time again that they should respect her. Grandma and Grandpa would never even address Mom by her name, instead refer to her as my, quote, dad's wife, stripping her of her agency as a human being and reducing her to the status of a maid for Dad's kids. Dad would stick up for her, but it was no use. The strict family hierarchy was supported by the general tendency for traditionalism and conservatism in my hometown, and people did not even consider rebelling against these societal norms. Well, my dad was comparatively progressive next to the other townsfolk. He knew it was controversial that he married a black woman, especially after the death of his first wife, who was Nathan and Scarlet's mother. Grandma and Grandpa only reluctantly accepted this marriage out of respect for my dad, who was their golden son. Somehow my dad never inherited the ignorant racist views of his peers, and he did not care about the gossip or judgment of others. He loved me and my mother to death. Unfortunately, my dad was literally the only person in town Mom and I had in our corner. I was a little kid when my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I was still too young to truly know what death even was, and the family dynamic of abuse still made no sense to me. Well, when Dad passed away, Mom and I moved into my grandparents' huge house along with Nathan and Scarlet. Even though my grandparents took us in, we were mistreated from the get-go. I found out later that my grandparents had only reluctantly taken us into their home out of respect for my father. My dad had to beg and plead for them to agree to support us. They held up their end of the deal, but only minimally. The abuse never stopped. Once my dad wasn't around to defend us anymore, I had nobody around to help me. Almost every single day when I was growing up, Nathan and Scarlet would gang up on me and beat the crap out of me. I was tormented on a daily basis, and when Mom tried to stop them, they did not listen because she was, quote, not the real Mom. Well, when Mom tried to discuss the issue with Grandma and Grandpa, they were always dismissive, saying I'd probably done something to deserve the daily beatings I've received. Grandma once rewarded Nathan with ice cream after a particularly vicious beating, all because he claimed he beat me out of self-defense, even though he was the one who started it. I would have to go to school with a black eye, and then the kids at school would beat me up again just for being black. I had a truly miserable childhood and upbringing. Fast forward to the present day, and life has honestly not much better. I'm 19 now, so I'm technically an adult, but I'm still living with my grandparents because I cannot afford to move out. They did not help me out with any of my college money, so I've worked 2 jobs ever since I graduated high school. My mom worked a lot as well, and she's hoping to save up enough money to eventually buy me and her a house just to live in, so we can be far away from my grandparents, Nathan and Scarlet. But the cost of a house in our town is so much. It's always been easier to stay with Grandma and Grandpa because they provide just enough for us. The bare minimum to keep us alive and healthy, but the abuse and stress of living there is unbearable. To add salt to the wound, Grandma and Grandpa paid for Nathan and Scarlet's college, even though those 2 dummies had horrible grades in school. Just as I'd predicted, it did not take long for Nathan and Scarlet to flunk out of college, and they ended up right back in Grandma and Grandpa's house living with me. They're still rude, unpleasant people. Anytime there's a new political issue on the news, they make sure to share their racist views with me, and I've learned to ignore their ignorance, but it still hurts my feelings to be treated like I'm some sort of alien, and not a human being who's flesh and blood. I swear it's like living in the 1800s out here in these hillbilly parts. Part of the reason Mom and I work so much, I think, is to just get a break from the daily mental turmoil of being stuck in that awful house. Well, Nathan and Scarlet hardly even have to work because Grandma and Grandpa spoiled them so darn much. My dad would be utterly appalled if he saw how his kids had turned out, and I know he taught them better than this, but they chose a life of laziness, greed, ignorance, and malice. It's quite sad and pathetic. Well, now that I've told you all about the ridiculous family dynamics that's defined much of my life, allow me to get you up to speed about what's going on. I've just had a rant about how my awful family for a bit because I wanted you to all see where I'm coming from with this. With all this in mind, surely you'll all see why I'm both excited but also approaching forward cautiously and with trepidation. Basically, Grandpa recently got sick. The guy's in his late 80s, and elderly people tend to get sick and die. Not to sound cold or callous, but when I got the news Grandpa had been diagnosed with, well, a terminal illness, I frankly did not feel much of anything one way or the other. I've never been close to the man, and virtually all my interactions with him have been unpleasant and marred by racism and ignorance. Of course, there was the more pressing issue of the vast fortune Grandpa had amassed in his lifetime. What was to become of this inheritance? Mom and I knew right away not to get our hopes up. In fact, we thought that we would be lucky to get anything. Whenever these discussions of estates and family matters had come up in the past, Mom and I were never even privy to the meetings. We were not invited to these sort of discussions because we were not viewed as members of the family, plain and simple. I took note of Grandpa's illness and continued on with living my life. Allow me to introduce to you the oldest lawyer in my hometown, Mr. Haddington, first name Osirus. Osirus was once the sharpest mind in town. He's 86, and he was the most coveted and sought-after lawyer in the area. My wealthy grandparents put him on a retainer decades ago, and he was often treated more like a family member than either me or my mom ever was. Well, one evening when Nathan and Scarlet were getting drunk and rowdy, they decided to gloat to me that Grandma had ensured Osirus drafted Grandpa's will in order to leave 90% of the inheritance to Nathan and Scarlet, while the remaining 10% would go to Mom and I. I didn't care. I was glad to get anything, especially when Mom and I had expected nothing. When Grandpa was on his deathbed, Mom and I worked our shifts at our jobs, and we were not by his side when he passed. After all, we were never truly family still. We felt like it would be the most respectful option to attend his funeral and endure the unpleasantness of it all. We didn't want to sit in a room with a distraught Grandma and Nathan and Scarlet, but we also knew there might be trouble if we did not attend. After the funeral, we met with the estate executor, who was about to read Grandpa's will to everybody. I could see the look of excitement on Nathan's and Scarlet's faces, but when the executor read the will, I could see everybody's jaw drop. Yes, you see, Osirus, at one point a great lawyer, but he was old and stubborn and suffering from dementia. He refused to retire because he loved law, but frankly he was quite likely to make mistakes towards the end. Quite a mistake he's made. Osirus switched the numbers accidentally. Mom and I, 90%. Grandpa's inheritance while Nathan and Scarlet were getting 10%. A commotion broke out immediately. Screaming, cursing, crying, racial slurs, it was clear the family was upset over the news. Mom and I had just smiled and left the funeral, and I'm excited about getting all this money, but I have a feeling this won't be the end of this ordeal. Grandma, Nathan, and Scarlet aren't going to go down without a fight. Update number 1. Hello everyone, OP here back for another update. I just wanted to say I appreciate everybody who left supportive, empathetic comments. I'm glad all of you understood the mistreatment, abuse, and racism I endured at the hands of people who were supposedly my family. That type of trauma can truly mess someone up. First, I wanted to tell everybody, Mom and I immediately took our money and bought a house in town. We wanted to get away from Grandma, Nathan, and Scarlet ASAP. We knew that staying in their home would even be more toxic, mentally draining now than, this inheritance issue was at the forefront of everything. We paid straight cash for the house and moved in right away. It's nice to have a place where we can eat and sleep in peace. And the house is close to where we work, and we're going to keep our jobs for now, just in case something wacky happens in the future. Grandma called me up crying and whining today. It was quite funny that she thinks she can convince me to change my mind after she's abused me for so long. She told me she tried to have Osirus, quote, fix the mistake at his office, and he discovered Osirus had passed away. It makes sense considering the man was old and on death's door. The new lawyers told her to take a hike, and I love it. Oh, and can you believe this? She said it's not fair that we bought a house that's bigger than hers. Right. I laughed and told her she should have learned to proofread her documents next time. I hung up the phone on that old lady, and still, I'm worried about what sort of tricks she might have up her sleeve. Update number 2. Hey guys, I'm back for another update. A lot of people have been asking if there have been any developments, and many of you are curious if I have any plans for the money, beyond just spending it on luxuries and so on. It was an interesting and helpful suggestion, until now. I've never really had any amount of money large enough to actually make a difference in the community or in people's lives. Mom and I sat down to discuss the issue. We thought that it would set a good example for the community if we used some of our inheritance money for the greater good. When we were brainstorming ideas for charities and causes that we could help, The most obvious issue was the racism and prejudice that we've experienced at the hands of our own family and community. We decided we could pull our funds together and open a non-profit charity organization for underprivileged minority youth, poor black kids, and the disenfranchised in general. We wanted to spread a message of love, unity, and anti-racism to our backward southern town, and just hopefully influence others to live a life with more love and compassion at their hearts. So we found a building and got a permit to begin running the operation, and it was making waves in the community from the very beginning. In our area, nobody had ever tried to open a charity like this. We even got interviewed for the local news, and Mom and I were already looking at getting a few TV commercials and radio commercials, as well as social media pages. Sure enough, Grandma heard about our new charity, and she called me on the phone and said Mom and I were, quote, ruining the family name. I laughed and told her that we were saving the family name so people would remember us as more than just racist hillbillies. Then I hung up the phone on her, and well, before that old bag of bones could even respond. Update number 3. Thanks to everyone who's kept reading so far. Again, I truly appreciate all the kind words and support and encouragement I've received. I'm glad you all suggested Mom and I use our new inheritance money for something that would help the community, because we're starting to do, well, great things with a nonprofit charity I discussed in my last update. I think we can spread enough compassion, kindness, and positivity that perhaps we can help this community after all, and change some of the attitudes people in my small town have held on for far too long. Of course, in a racist city such as my own, Mom and I have expected our attempt at charity to get some criticism. With all the attention of our nonprofit was receiving, I knew it must have been driving grandmother Nathan and Scarlet totally nuts. They were all jealous and could not stand when others received recognition or attention for anything. Mom and I knew it was only a matter of time before somebody in this family or somebody in the community tried to interfere with what we were trying to accomplish here. Sure enough, right on cue, the day after Grandma and I had that heated cell phone call, Mom and I went to work at the charity and to get some things done. And who do you think we saw standing outside the building carrying picket signs and making a bunch of noise and disrupting the peace? That's right, none other than Nathan and Scarlet. Those two were obvious ringleaders of this circus. But I could tell that they had also gotten some of their ignorant racist friends from their church to help them protest to make it seem like they had a large crowd for their fake so-called cause. This behavior was disgusting, but since they had a right to protest, Mom and I could not do anything about it. Now, all over Facebook and social media, our charity is getting all these hate messages. It turns out people have been spreading false rumors about us hurting babies and doing all these horrible satanic stuff at the charity, and the local hillbillies in the area are believing it. I know Nathan and Scarlet are behind this, I just don't know how to stop them, because they're posting anonymously. Update number 4. Hey guys, another update for you. I'll try to be very sufficient because a lot has happened. Frankly, as much as I love talking to you guys, I wish life would go back to normal and I would not have to keep writing here, but crazy things just keep happening. As I described in my last update, Nathan and Scarlet and their goons have been protesting Mom and I's nonprofit charity. It's funny, the first time this town has tried to do something nice to help the less fortunate and the racists in town are protesting it. Of course, Nathan and Scarlet soon took on to the social media rumor mill and began trolling our charity into oblivion. We've been getting nonstop hate mail, and I've been seeing all these rumors spread about us. Frankly, I'd had enough. I got sick of this. I mean, here I was, the winner of Grandpa's inheritance, and I was a homeowner and ran my own nonprofit charity to help the community. Yet here I was, still dealing with the ignorant prejudice and abuse of my worthless so-called family that never did a thing for me. I decided to just go ahead and utilize the charity's recent attention and buzz to my advantage. I asked a local news channel if they would be interested in arranging an interview so I could discuss my charity a bit more, and they were happy to oblige. I got dressed up nice and fancy, and I began preparing my speech for when the TV cameras arrived. That's when I dropped the bombshell. on everyone. This was to be the ultimate revenge. I spilled the beans on everything regarding my family. I discussed how I was the victim of racism my entire life and how that inspired me to start the charity once I finally got some money in life. I outed my family members by name on television and discussed in intimate detail the beatings and name-callings that I endured as a child, and I even discussed their efforts to derail my charity. They did not come out of that interview looking anywhere close to the saints they wanted people in town to believe they were. That's for sure. I wanted the truth to be laid out for everybody to have a chance to see. I knew the interview would get some buzz in town, but I soon started seeing it all over Facebook. I was excited my charity was getting so much attention from all this, and to top it off, I knew Grandma, Nathan, and Scarlet had to be humiliated to have their racist views broadcasted all over the internet in a viral video. Of course, while I was satisfied with what I've done, I had a feeling this would be the bait I needed to get my family to do something stupid in retaliation. You see, I designed our charity building to be completely surrounded by cameras, of course, because I knew our charity would likely be a target of nefarious activity, and turns out I was right. That night, after the interview had gone viral, my security cameras at the charity caught Nathan and Scarlet trying to burn down the entire building. Lucky, I had splurged on alarms that alerted the authorities of intruders close by. The cops got there right away and arrested everyone. Nathan, Scarlet. They had all the evidence of a planned arson. I'm just glad these idiots were apprehended. I'll let you know of any developments as soon as I find out more. While I'm glad these two were arrested, I'm really just glad that they weren't able to do any damage to the charity building. Update number 5. Hello everyone, OP here, and once again thanks to you all who have been reading and leaving supportive feedback the entire time. This situation has been a stressful ordeal, and it's helped tremendously to have you people here giving me all the support that I need. A lot has happened since my last update, but I wanted to wrap everything up for you all, since I kept getting people asking about it, so apologies for the late response. I've just been a bit busy. First, let's talk about Nathan and Scarlet. They were arrested, and they were charged with arson. Well, my great lawyer was able to charge them for defamation of character because of all the lies and slander they spread about my charity online. They were both receiving prison time, and it was a load off my mind, knowing I did not have to worry about those clowns trying to mess with me or Mom anymore. The judge was also kind enough to grant a restraining order against Grandma, just in case. Well, as far as the charity, we're doing great and only expanding into different areas. While we still have original charity locations in my hometown, after all the family drama drained us so much, we decided to sell our old house and move to a different state far away from the reminders of our old life and the abuse and ignorance that we had to endure. Grandma eventually died, alone and depressed in a big empty house with nobody around to care about her. Turns out that living a life of hatred and negativity does not quite pay off for anybody, because, in the end, Mom and I came out on top. All of her focus on image, money, and status meant quite little in the end, where there was nobody left around her to possibly care. Now the family name will forever be tied to an anti-racist charity, and I know Dad would be so proud of Mom and me. Anyways, thank you guys for listening.
Well, I think it's good that OP and OP's mother finally got out of that toxic town with all those bad memories of growing up, and the fact that grandmother died alone. I mean, this story was karma. Let's not forget about the nightmare siblings who went to jail for the arson. I want to know your thoughts about this story, guys. Go ahead, drop your opinions down below. Here's the question of the video. Do you agree with every single step that OP took, or do you think, for instance, something should have been changed? I'll give you an example. As soon as they got the inheritance money, in my opinion, they should have just left the town right away and cut ties with everyone. But I want to know your thoughts, guys. My name's Mr. Reddito. Thank you for joining me on today's videos, and if you want more daily videos, super simple, hit that subscribe button with the bell notifications on and you'll get your wish. I'll see you tomorrow, and remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.